Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan at Exoderma.
Hey guys, this is Lou from Exoderma.
And today we are going to talk about something that interests Lou and I both. Specifically, this is how much we are able to control our bodies. Even more specifically, more about Wim Hof, if you guys are familiar with him, and actually being able to breathe and control the various systems of your body. So, in the study we're going to talk about, Wim Hof actually, and him and a group of people who've been training this breathing sequences, sat in cold water, ice water. I think how long was it? 2 hours, and they measured a whole bunch of vital signs to determine how they handled the stimuli of the cold water. But before we get too much into it, let's talk about controlling our bodies. We previously talked about it in meditation in the last podcast, and I guess we're gonna hit this again. So Lou, when it comes to, man, I feel like I don't have it right. I don't have it down. Let me stop talking, bro. I'm just talking right now. What's I gotta come up with a bridge, bro.
Yeah, so I mean, it's about the study that you shared with me, right?
Yeah, but it's more like the use is like, okay, so like I said, put a pause in there and say, what did I say? I'm gonna send a pause and cut this video and then start again right here at some point. Because okay, so the use is like, all right, so we can control our body. Now we find out that we can actually control our bodies with our consciousness, with actually like learning how to do this, and that's cool and everything. But what does it really mean? Number one. Number two is that bad? You know, and if it's not bad, then is there a way that we should try to help people improve this? And can we help people improve this? Or is it something you have to go to a lab? You know, like these kind of things are what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, exactly. So all right, so first of all, let's talk about why you would want to do this type of controlling of the system that is supposed to be, I guess, um, autonomic, right? Like
Yes, completely.
not under your control. It's just supposed to happen. Um, there comes a point where people's systems have uh, either underactivation or overactivation, right? So in autoimmune diseases, for example, I think lupus or so, the immune system starts it overactivating and attacking its own body, even though there is no actual foreign threat to its system. Um, so that's one example of where the immune system has some type of response that's not normal, right, and hyperactive in a sense. There's other types of inflammatory responses that are also responsible for other types of uh, pathologies, let's say. So you have like irritable bowel syndrome, right? All these other type of um, bodily systemic problems that are caused by or somehow related to immune system activity. I think even like they've done studies and have researched about how Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and even like neuromotor um, diseases are related to somehow the immune system. It's related to the immune system breaking down the body's own cells and like mechanisms, and that's how the damage is actually
I see. So
occurring.
hypothetically, if we were to pinpoint the system, I mean, there are some systems that we don't know if we can control. Like we know that, okay, so this study proves that a system that we didn't know we can control before is now actually able to be influenced consciously. And that other systems may be able to be influenced consciously, like the ones that the immune system sort of intervenes with.
Yeah, exactly. It gives us an idea that we're not sure yet of the limit of our control over our own bodies. So there's also the I'm not sure if you've heard of damn, it's slipping my mind, but it has to do with your microbial gut concentration as well as leaky gut. Have you ever heard of the leaky gut?
Yes.
Okay, so that's also, I think, something super important related to this, where in your intestines there's like this wall, right? That part of it is inside of you, and then the other is the extracellular matrix and outside, like the capillaries and stuff. Um, which in leaky gut syndrome or stuff like that, the walls start like coming apart. And so little particles of food and undigested molecules can leak into your actual body. So that's when your immune system starts detecting those particles as threats, and it starts tagging them as markers for future annihilation. And if those particles of food or those molecules that leak into your body are resemble some part of your system or some important protein that your body produces, your body's going to start attacking those important proteins or cellular structures. So yeah, that's why that's an issue as well.
So we really get into this complex place where we're really trying to figure out, I guess, like how much stimuli you can input into the body or lack of stimuli, or I guess like you could put into the body to cause some output, to cause some function to happen. So it's like we don't know if leak. So man, that's such an interesting thing. Okay, so it's like in the context of leaky gut specifically, it's that you would actually have to be able to number one, before you can even affect the system, sort of. I guess it's hard to. My mind is having a hard time wrapping this around controlling the systems that we don't really have awareness of. You know, like that.
Yeah.
Like what would prevent leaky gut, or what would prevent our immune system from attacking itself? Should a protein or some kind of biological tissue that we actually need be tracked or targeted? That's so okay. So what this comes down to is that our systems are kind of designed to keep us alive, but they're not always doing a good job of it. And part of I guess the remarkable part of this when it comes to Wim Hof is that he's the first person to prove that you're actually able to go about doing this without any kind of medication or any kind of surgery or technology at all.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens when you have these types of reactions in your body, right? Your body releases pro-inflammatory molecules for sort of like communicating to your body that there should be some type of response in your autoimmune system, right? So that's what gets all of these other cells active and can produce even like symptoms such as like flu-like symptoms.
It's all inflammatory triggered.
Exactly. To pretty
That's
much
why
deal.
the study is so really big. I couldn't get why the study was so big on inflammation and the response to it.
Exactly. So the reason that you get a fever and like you start having mucus, excessive mucus, and all build up and all that stuff is due to those inflammatory responses from your body, right? To get rid of whatever is inside threatening it. So what supposedly this study shows is that when you have excessive or persistent inflammatory responses, right, that's bad. It's not supposed to be chronic. It's just supposed to be for a small amount of time until you get rid of it, and then it fades away. But people have this chronic inflammatory response in their body sometimes due to whatever disease is affecting them. And so being able to produce your own anti-inflammatory response, right, can counteract those inflammatory markers that are inside your body right now, flooding your bloodstream and your cells. So they show that you can somehow, right, through breathing and exposure to cold water and all these meditation techniques or whatever, cause your actual immune system to produce the opposite molecules.
Okay, so you just summed the study up for me and pieced it together, like, because I read it and I got some hot words from it, and and I grasped some of it, but that makes so much sense now. So literally, and there's no limitation potentially, at least we don't know. So how would we test these things? How would you say, okay, this person's training this technique, and we want to see if it affects some other systemic problem? What would another systemic problem be in your mind, at least, that we could potentially utilize something like that on?
That's a good question. I guess some type of I would like to. I mean, it's no extent. There's no real limit on what you could test it on? It would just kind of be like which ones would maybe show some signs of results or something. But I'd be interested in testing it out on like people with diabetes or something, and like not insulin resistance issues or something like that, to see if any of these types of training protocols would affect their insulin production at all.
That's actually really because that. So I don't think this study really includes. They don't really go specific on the training exercises that the people are actually trained in.
Yeah,
But
it just says really quickly. Sorry to interrupt.
you're good, man. Go ahead and say what it
They
says.
go into third eye meditation, hyperventilation followed by breath retention, and
Yes.
exposure to ice cold immersions in ice cold water. So I mean, yeah, they don't probably go through like the
Well,
specific protocols.
no, they do. They do. What I'm saying is that they do. They didn't specifically say which ones they do, but if you go look at Wim Hof's methods, the protocol they're really doing is the same one that Wim Hof does all the time. It's the hyperventilation and the breath.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I mean, I think I've like heard about Wim Hof and his theory of why he thinks all this helps. And it pretty much has to do with like your blood chemistry, right? Your blood oxygen chemistry. So being able to get in more oxygen into your system changes the pH balance of your blood, and that produces an environment for your body to be optimally, I guess, resistant against threats.
That's so crazy to think about because like I said, it has so many more applications. But yeah, I was gonna say, but yeah, so this actually affects the blood oxygen level in the pH, which is what the study was about as well. How those things are tested for them as well. Okay. Potential benefits: limited control of body, survival, nervous system. There's no real reason for people to really actually learn like how to do this. Like, because so like I think so the way he sells it sort of is like, like the ice cold bath, the running in your shorts across some Arctic frozen land or whatever, some Arctic tundra. And this is how you get to your place where you can control your metabolic system and everything. I guess I don't feel like so like I'm trying to sell it to myself, and I don't feel like it really matters that much. Like, why would someone want to, like, I guess only like, because I guess the replacement would be actually physically doing it, like physically going to sprint or physically going to run, or like I don't know, like I'm trying to. I am personally enjoy it. Like I've done them before and gotten the sensation, the tingling and everything, and felt the rush of adrenaline. And obviously I couldn't tell the blood pH, but I don't know. It's not a strong sell for other people. Have you tried this before yourself?
It's hard for me to do it. I do think that there's some merit in it. So eventually I would want to be able to, but
Yeah, it takes learning. Yeah.
yeah. So there's this part that was saying that um, the people thought that the system, the autonomous nervous system can't be influenced voluntarily, right?
Yeah.
So people that are able to hold like world records in extreme cold. So for example, they're able to somehow activate this system inside their body, right? That produces these molecules that are able to um, pretty much be like analgesic. Is that how you pronounce that word?
I don't know what part are you on?
Like well, actually I wasn't reading that right now, but like pretty much like when like you have anesthesia,
Yes.
you can numb a part of your body.
Hmm.
So pretty much these people are able to activate a part of their system that releases molecules which provide anesthesia for their body so that they don't feel the cold in reality, right? So now my question is like, can they activate it if they're not in that scenario, right? If they're like, I don't know, on a beach somewhere. But it also then is a question of why would they need to activate it at that point in time, right? Why would you want to numb your body if you're okay at a nice, warm, sunny beach? But yeah, but if you're at a really cold
Yeah, that's
place and you want to survive, it makes sense to not freeze yourself.
yeah, no, I totally get that. So like, in Siberia or Russia, they have this like sort of this tradition where the young kids will go out in their bathing suits with the teachers out in the freezing cold in the snow, and they'll play in the snow with their bathing suits on. It's
Mhm.
to sort of train them to be able to have the autoimmune response to be able to handle the cold effectively. But again, I'm trying to like, I love the whole idea of being able to control one's body, but like outside of that context, I really can't think of any practical use for someone actually needing to do this unless it was for medical trials. Like, it's cool to prove that it can happen. I guess it's more like the sell point is that you can do it, maybe. Right?
I mean, yeah, it probably becomes a more so like a part of an entire feedback system loop where, if you do this, then for whatever reason you're also more mentally stronger, or psychologically, there's some change in there, and then that produces changes in your brain structure, which produce changes in other parts of your life, and it's like, you continue doing that, and it becomes like some type of healing uh, part of a holistic, I don't know, treatment protocol or something.
That makes okay, yeah, okay. So this would be something that you would just train because of the secondary benefits that may potentially happen, like for your cognitive performance. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it makes total sense. Okay. So then like one of the steps would be to actually measure someone's cognitive performance after they perform these tests, or not just sitting in an ice bath, because it's useless to really do. I mean, unless you're recovering from something. But if
Yeah, I'd also want to check to see if there's any type of effects on depression, or other types of psychological states where people have no other methods of treatment.
So you're saying that hypothetically you could get a brainwave scanner or some kind of neurological scanner, and literally get them to do these sequences. So I guess you'd have to create some kind of experiment, right? Where you would test their mental state beforehand, go through the sequence, and then test their mental state afterwards. But they wouldn't be able to be aware that you're testing their mental state.
Yeah, so you'd have to do I think, a double-blind study where
Yeah.
you do a control and an experimental group. Nobody knows which is which.
Interesting. Okay, so it had to be but using that, you'd actually be able to go even further and say, okay, this isn't just about turning your parasympathetic nervous system on to make you feel better. This actually improves your mental state, and if done regularly, potentially over time.
It could improve mental state. It could improve mood. It could improve energy levels. So people that feel like fatigued, or that have like
You reading this?
what?
Are you reading this right now?
Oh no, this is my like idea of like where I would want to study or apply it to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, I completely agree. Okay, yeah, so Wim Hof, I feel like someone should be doing more research on his techniques,
Yeah,
essentially.
because I think that there's a relationship between your inner chemistry and the way you feel. There's definitely something like that.
You're right, and this goes back to our last podcast before that, where we talked about the physiological and the psychological, and there is some kind of feedback loop in between the two of them. Is this breathing a way to manage the feedback in between the two layers? Is this type of breathing one of them? And if it's paired with meditating, it seems like that's what they want to sell it. That's what it is. Like this potential way to be able to manage the feedback between the two layers, which would be the chemistry and how you feel about everything.
Yeah, man. And breathing is crazy because if you think about it, it's one of the few processes that are kind of subconscious at one point, but you can have conscious control over it.
Yeah, that's that gets into the whole conversation of sort of the meditation and like, so what is meditation for? It's like, oh well, it's for the mindfulness. And what do you mean by mindfulness? Well, it means focus on what you're doing. If that means breathing, that means focus on the breath itself in this moment right now. Otherwise, it's like this. They use it like the first thing is whenever you're socializing, you're talking to other people, make sure you're practicing your breathing routine, so that way you're being mindful, right? So when I'm not breathing deeply, I'm not being mindful, which is probably true, but I didn't mean for it to be. Wow. But yeah, that's such an interesting thing, man. It can really apply in so many different levels but again, no one's studying it beyond the first study. Like I haven't seen anyone actually research into this stuff more.
Exactly. So that part of the, I guess, the allure or the thing that pulls people in, or myself, I guess, in a sense, is the fact that breathing is something you can control. So by being something that you can control, it becomes a tool to possibly become a healing uh, mechanism for you.
And that's what you're saying. So anything that we could potentially classify within our system as a tool, whether it's technology, whether it's breathing, whether it's thinking good thoughts, these are things that can be taken advantage of in order to affect the layer, the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And then that other part or aspect that we were trying to mention about the control aspect is our body, right? Controlling our movement, doing mindful motions and doing exercises that activate those um, proper antagonistic pairs, right?
Yes. And really going into that part right there specifically, like it brings me into this mental state of like sort of what Tai Chi is. So like this whole breathing and moving.
Oh man, that's the best, dude.
Yeah. So my question here, because my knowledge of the human body is like 2 years old. So, you know what I'm saying? Don't hate me. It's everything in speculation. I'm learning stuff. But here's my question is when it comes to Tai Chi, right? And it comes to just any kind of matching your tempo of your breath to the movement. This is something that I imagine was just naturally done when it came to efficient sprinting away from a fucking lion or something. You know what I mean? But we actually have full-on sequences and practices now where we try to sync our breathing into the movement because it maximizes the end result of what that movement is. But what I feel like is that there's more that's affected than just the actual, like, say, the force or power of the movement. Is there some kind of correlation between breath and, I guess, cellular respiration and the movement itself?
Yeah, so breath, initially, the reason why you always have to inhale, right, before you perform any type of motion is for your muscle cells to be full of oxygen and the mitochondria to be able to do all the chemistry that's necessary for the myosin and all the other actin molecules to produce, yeah, exactly, to produce the contractions. Um, so that's the importance of oxygen going in, right? And then the reason you have to exhale and um, do the opposite is because there's going to be a buildup of toxic chemicals inside of your body because of the chemistry that just happened during the movement, right? So you need to exhale that out. You need to throw out all the bad toxins, and then you got to pull back in more oxygen. So it's the fact that your system kind of uses up and replenishes oxygen on a cyclic basis, that you have to relate that and make it as efficient as possible with the movement that you're going to do, because it would be kind of backwards if you exhaled before your motion, right? Because you're kind of releasing all the oxygen from your body has no oxygen to actually utilize, and then you're going to inhale after you've actually moved and all toxins are inside your body still.
So then that would mean that there is an actual proportion, a ratio between the intensity of the movement and the oxygen that needs to be used for that movement. Or
Exactly, yeah.
which means that humans nowadays more than likely do not have an efficient cyclic process of breathing, one, or two, capacity, like volume, air volume in their lungs to even for the body to be able to efficiently move. Like it's like, right?
Yeah, exactly. The concept is also efficiently be distributed to all the cells. So the more shallow your breath is, the less oxygen you have to distribute throughout your body. Some cells or some parts might be getting very small quantities of it.
Which is why where like say the transverse abdominis would atrophy quickly because it's not getting any electricity more than likely, which is just from rotation, and it's not getting any oxygen because of the shallow breaths, which is also a limitation of your rotation and not breathing from diaphragm.
Exactly. So those neurochemical adaptations over time cause atrophying, and then that's another another loop, right? Because then that causes other muscles to overactivate and overcompensate.
So
Yeah.
what we're really talking about here, like just to connect this to like what we're trying to accomplish with mechanical like trying to figure out the movement, everything and the breathing, is what we're talking about really is that first, number one is, do we have all the systems in the human body down? Like, I know we have the physical functions and the physical structures as a result of those functions, but are there other systems within the human body that aren't anatomically outlined that actually have functions that we don't necessarily, like the spleen? I mean, like, what was the appendix or the spleen, things of that nature? I think it was
I'm not
appendix.
going to say no, there might be. Because, you know, the human body is still very complex. And like you said, when you look inside of it, it's not like you can delineate anything.
Yes, exactly.
We've kind of done it for the textbooks and to kind of learn and as a tool to teach and stuff like that. But essentially, if you cut your arm and you look through, it's literally a continuous
Tissues.
yeah, it's a continuous structure.
Matrix.
Exactly. So it kind of blends in, right? Because it's like the muscle kind of goes into cartilage and then it goes into tissue, tendons, and then into the bone, all as one continuous thing. It's very hard to really pick apart.
Yeah, and that's where, like, so like the way I think about it is that the best we could potentially do is measure the elasticity of certain tissues and the plasticity of other tissues and then the viscosity of other tissues, and then try to figure some picture out from that.
Dude. There might also be some structures in the brain themselves that we haven't really figured out really a lot about, especially in meditation and the pineal gland with you know, visualization as well as other I don't know, pretty I guess esoteric type of things, but
yeah, they're conscious constructs that are in our minds that have a physical representation or physical effect on the outside.
yeah, just to get a little crazy for like one really quick second. For example, like one of my questions is, you know, why does the human consciousness or awareness have an existence, right? Because obviously, if we didn't have an awareness or existence, obviously we wouldn't be able to have this conversation for sure. But we would still be able to like let's say we were just reflexes and we were just instincts and no awareness, none of that. Yeah. We would still be able to react to things, right? We would still be able to move around and do things and like zombies, right? Pretty much zombies with nothing inside of our minds, nothing inside of our heads, but bodies just moving and reacting.
There are a lot of people like that though, so this is not some fake case.
But for some reason, consciousness arose and awareness became a thing inside of biological systems, which I think is extended to other systems. I believe dogs have an awareness, right? Obviously, it's not as crazy as ours, but it has to feel like something to be a dog.
Keeps them alive very
Exactly.
effectively.
Yeah. So the fact that we have this stage inside of our minds where we can imagine things and visualize stuff and use it to actually possibly change the inner state of our physiology. That's pretty crazy, and I think that's still something we're going to learn more about and study in the future.
That is so completely true, especially as we get better at understanding the brainwave, or at least the signals that are coming from the brain and how they interplay. And I guess we were talking because a lot of this is literally Wim Hof is in a way sort of evolutionarily ahead of a lot of humans, not physiologically because we're all the same, but in the context that he's aware or he's at least programmed some level of control within his autonomic biology that just kind of operates by itself.
He's been able to tap into the human potential more than the average person.
Yes, and maybe monks have been doing this for hundreds of years. We just never had a way to know it or test it or study it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's some pretty interesting lore out in the monk world where there's like monks who got into a meditative state right before they died, and like they're still like in that state. Obviously, they've decayed very little bit, but like there's been like hundreds of years that they've been in that state.
I mean, you saw the monk that set himself on fire not too long ago, like a few years back. And
yeah, that's crazy too.
He just sat there and it just burned to death, and he didn't even flinch.
That was one of my arguments for the fact that, you know, there's free will in a sense, because you can go against your instinct to want to react to like getting burned alive, you know, like.
I mean that isn't that like, so that's the thing is like consciousness is just that, like, so that's why I think like consciousness is like, so it's like really hard to delineate between like levels. I say levels of consciousness, right? Because as a human being, we all have a level of consciousness that other species has, but as a human being who not only number one is aware that you can control certain processes, but actually has built the discipline and the year, put in the effort and years and whatever associated to actually do it. And that's another level of consciousness that is like kind of mystical in a way, because we don't have any way to actually quantify it. And what we're talking about literally is that number one, we can physically see this phenomenon now, and we have some anatomical description of the systems in order to represent it a little bit, but we have no way of really I guess mechanically representing, or not necessarily, I guess it's just a matter of teaching someone how to do it, right? We all have the that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, man, being able to go against, like, the way I describe it is being able to go against the program, right? Being able to go against
Is consciousness.
Is the free will, the consciousness that
Yeah, I mean, the free will is up for debate still. Consciousness is totally different, though. I think that the ability to go against biological programming just means that humans evolved and you figured it out. The ability to free will is this question in which you realize that you're the god or the king, whatever, of your own reality, and all you have to do is learn to play the role. I mean, like, play the rules, and you can do whatever you want. As long as you play the rules and abide by them, which is a social construct, socially constructed rules, then you can play the game. That's your free will. But like your consciousness, I don't know. That's just I mean, it makes sense. Like, it definitely is, like, it's kind of going against the programming, but in a way, it's also like, isn't it ordained? Like, getting to this level of ability to control our bodies is inevitable, it seems. At least it should be for some level of the population.
Yeah, for some folks, I think that may be the case. I don't know. It's still hard to define consciousness and like specifically say that if I'm saying that word, that you're specifically thinking of the same thing that we're both.
We could be both unconscious right now, by the way. I just want to put that out there. You
What?
and I could both be totally unconscious and not be aware of it.
I don't think so.
I know, but it's just hard to say. I'm just saying that unless you practice your breathing exercises, you're never gonna know.
No, exactly. So that's when my point was going to, is that I think that consciousness is really hard to both be on the same page about. Like, for example, for me, it's see, okay, so consciousness and conscious are two different things to me.
Yes,
completely different things to me. So I could be conscious of my breathing, but my consciousness is more or less just related to my phenol I don't know how to pronounce it.
Phenomenological?
Yeah, like the qualia that I am experiencing, right?
So you don't think of consciousness as the awareness of awareness?
Yeah, that's also part of it. So that's another part of consciousness, which is right. So you have the thing that's getting observed, right, which is in front of me right now, the colors and the shapes.
Your own perception, right?
Yeah, and then behind that is the awareness, right, of what's looking at that stuff.
And then behind
that, both to me, consciousness, right? And then there's another thing that's behind that, aware of the fact that there's something that's aware.
And there may be something behind that are a lot of monks will talk about.
It could go infinitely back, in essence, right? It could go infinitely back. Like, there's always something else that can be observing that observer. And to me, that all of that is consciousness. So consciousness encompasses all of those layers. Yeah. Including the frontal layer, which is that thing that is being observed to me.
Let's do this, actually. Let's give consciousness ranges, because it seems a lot easier to define. Because I don't disagree with anything you're saying. What I think is that I would have to we have to layer in ranges. Like, so consciousness would literally be like a human being, right? It would be the first layer. Like, okay, you're seeing everything, and then you're witnessing it. That's your consciousness, layer one, right? But layer two is this, what we call the neocortex, the reason layer, that sort of, so your layer one interprets everything emotionally. You don't have a choice. It pulls all this information in, and it's immediately biased. Everyone's wearing glasses, no one knows. We pull this information in, it's biased by our emotion, and then the second brain, this second layer, processes that information in a lag time. Everybody has different lag times. Mine sometimes is really fucking long, sometimes it's really short. It really depends on how emotionally connected I am. But there's a lag time between the layers, right? But there's this other layer, that this third layer that these monks talk about, in a sense where it's like you're like aware of, like, who am I? What am I? Am I this speech? Am I my body? Am I the expressions I'm using to clarify my identity? who am I? And then they get to this sort of place to talk about where I is everything they use to differentiate themselves from everything else they are, which is humanity. So it's like you get to this third level, and I know I call it the social collective, like where it's like, okay, I'm no longer me, I'm actually us. Now there may be another, they may have another way of like, I've never experienced it, so I wouldn't know. But the way that I just call it like that is like, I don't know, like so you get your own level of like awareness, but what happens after you become aware of yourself? What about everybody else?
Yeah. So in essence, what I think is also going on is so right, my perception of the world and your perception of the world, that part of our consciousness is actually different, right? Because you might be colorblind, or I might have some type of thing. So our perception and that layer of our consciousness is related to the ego in a sense.
Yes.
In which, like you said, it's that biased, filtered version of reality.
Yes.
But then it gets filtered back to the next layer, which starts becoming that observer, right, of information. And I think once you start peeling back into the final ultimate layer, the last layer, that's the source, right? That's
yes, the
that's the thing that's the thing that underlies all human beings.
Or
exactly,
just
you know, everything. It could be everything.
Maybe there's a fourth layer that's everything, and the third layer is all human beings.
It could be, yeah, it could be multi-layered into like deeper and deeper stuff, right? But I think that at least in the sense that we can understand each other, right? There's something that is listening to you right to me right now that understands what I'm trying to communicate, and that is that we both have something that it feels like to be, and then on top of that is all of this other stuff.
Our identity.
Our
identity first, which is like sort of the issue, but then it's also like in the next layer. So that's the thing. Okay. And so like when we give these ranges of consciousness, we say that the level 1 of consciousness is sort of just that you like, I can't really place it because I can't really say whenever I realized that I was like, I'm not sure. Can you even say a point when you actually realized that you were like, oh shit, like, no, it didn't really happen. It's kind of like a gradual thing.
Like, yeah, I think it was very young though, for some reason, just because I guess it's just the nature of my curiosity or something. But at a very young age, I was probably already like aware that I was aware of things.
I'm not sure if I wasn't. I mean, for instance, like I guess I remember breaking my arm when I was like 7th grade, and I remember taking control of the heart rate monitor. Like I literally learned how to breathe to control the heart rate monitor within like 3 minutes. Yeah. And I was just sitting like, oh shit, if I can turn my breathing this much, I can focus on it. And I got really good. I used to go to doctor's offices, and I would start controlling my breath before they did the stethoscope. So I could actually slow my heart rate down. And I watched it happen real time, and I got really good at doing that. And it was like just this curiosity of what can I control. And then obviously eventually came into like one-legged squats and one-legged hand, like all the one-arm hand, like pull-ups and handstands, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it sort of gets in this whole thing where I guess my curiosity started really young too, but I can't say if it was awareness. I don't think it was. It was really just, what the fuck can I control? Like, what can I actually do with what I got, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to point at a specific point in time at all, but yeah, eventually it was just these questions of like, I don't know, existence and like, you know, like being and stuff like that, which were kind of unrelated to religious pursuits, but it was just a curiosity for my own philosophical, you know, gains or something.
No, I'm with you. Like, I think the whole endeavor or journey with religion is to try to sort of understand consciousness and its ubiquitous purveyance across all that is. And it's technically like the speculation to say that it exists, but it doesn't really matter because what we're talking about here is that the human psyche has layers, and with each layer there is more control, or at least more perception of control. And the perception of control sometimes actualizes as actual physiological responses. And the better, like any human being who is to slowly increase their ability to go within the layers of their consciousness would also naturally have a byproduct that would change the way they perceive reality, which means it's not any. So it's like the ultimate, like I guess the ultimate hack when it comes to like what Wim Hof did isn't anything to do with your immunity at all. It's actually to do with the fact that you have control. And a lot of people, I think, like they would blame their biology on the reason for their circumstances in life, when in reality, like even though we were like at the mercy of our genes, we have pretty fucking good control over
most situations.
Yeah. And this immune system response just proves it would be like, I guess the far end range of what the human consciousness is actually capable of with our biology, and not like
That's what I think it really points out, is the fact that the consciousness that we have isn't a passive system that is there. It's an actual active feedback into affecting our reality.
That's why you say free will, because there is a system at play here that we are inhabiting, a very complex system that we're inhabiting, and being able to affect the system as a component of the system, but as an outside external observer, means that you at the very minimum have free will over your own body, your own reality, and your own what's in your immediate vicinity. At the very minimum.
Exactly.
Interesting. I could see. Okay, I think we're getting so far off base, but really, and it was a rough start for me, but I get this now. This conversation was really about the capacity of the human consciousness and how we can actually act free will.
Yeah, how we can affect firstly ourselves, and then maybe eventually, have effects on other things outside of us. Eventually, if we believe it enough.
Yeah, so this podcasting is going to need to have some follow-up in the future, because I feel like there aren't enough studies, or at least I'm not aware of any studies that really go into the conscious control over biological systems, which I'm going to write that down because that is the title. Conscious control over biological systems. And that right there is a bridge conversation, just because there's like the amount of systems that are potentially able to be affected, or that's a really big conversation, actually.
Yeah, man, you could affect your heart. You can affect your many systems, liver, lungs, kidneys.
Yeah, I used to play Call of Duty with a heart rate monitor and measure my kind of keep track of my responses, and every now and then I still do it. Measure my responses to see how, like, when I get into a sticky situation, can I breathe, or do I lose control and start like reacting, and like my heart rate goes up, my hands get sweaty. Like if you continue to breathe though, and you remind your, like, I get a heart rate monitor in front of me on my phone, my heart rate monitor on, and I'm sitting here.
No, I'm pretty sure soldiers and stuff have that type of feedback as well with their helmet gear and stuff like that now.
Yeah, not just they probably do. And this actually, you know what? This is a really interesting conversation. When we're gonna have a whole podcast episode on that though, and Wim Hof is a starter. It's gonna be next week's episode. We're gonna talk about more in depth conscious control over biological systems, because I feel like that's a really interesting conversation to go on. Maybe we won't talk about it next week. Either way, we're gonna end it here, right?
Yeah, that was a good podcast, man. Good material, and we'll definitely have more topics to talk about in the future related to this stuff. So
yeah, they're gonna get better. I promise, guys. If you're listening. All right. Good stuff.